everybody! Believe it or not, today has a lot in store for you. You're probably wondering what I mean. Well, today's the day I'm going to teach you about primaries and caucuses. We will learn what they are, how they work, what states in America use which, why each state does things differently, what winner-take-all is, what a superdelegate is, the pros and cons of a superdelegate, and how a general election differs from primaries and caucuses. So, let's get started. What's a primary, I'm sure you're wondering. Well, let me shine some light. A primary is when voting directly takes place within a state or indirectly through the choice of delegates at the presidential nominating convention to choose a nominee for the Democrat and Republican parties that will compete in a campaign to become the next president of the United States. So basically, states hold an election and vote on candidates based on party, or a representative from that state chooses the side that the state would like to represent for either the Republican or Democrat presidential candidate. How does this work? Well, a state has the power to hold an election, so if a state such as New Hampshire, the first state that holds a primary each year, decides to have a primary, a voting place will be set up, and depending on the type of primary and whether you are registered to vote or not, you could participate in your state's primary. Wait a minute, did I just say different types of primaries? What? Yeah, there's more. There are 4 different types of primaries: closed primaries, open primaries, blanket primaries, and semi-open primaries. That's crazy, I know. A closed primary is when you can only vote within the primary if you are registered with one party, which would be the ballot you receive, either Democrat or Republican. Got it? Okay. An open primary is when you can show up at a primary and vote by choosing whatever party ballot you would like that day, regardless of which party is on your voting registration papers. A blanket primary is fairly new to the United States and has a reputation for becoming more common. The blanket primary is when you go in to vote and you receive one ballot that has not one but both parties on it, allowing you to vote in both party primaries. Now that we know what a primary is, how it works, and the different types of primaries, yeah, I know, it was a workout. Let's talk about certain states that prefer primaries over caucuses. What's a caucus? Well, we'll get to that soon, don't worry. Some states prefer primaries over caucuses, such as New Hampshire and Alabama. You might be wondering why. Well, certain states choose to use a primary rather than a caucus because the primary allows the people to formally vote and usually a proportional representation of selected delegates. Alright, so now you're probably a little confused on why certain states would choose a primary over a caucus. Probably because you don't know what the heck a caucus is. A caucus is not a formal place of voting as in a primary, but rather a meeting of people who express their preferences towards the party nominees. How the heck do people express their preferences without voting? Well, it's pretty simple actually. Basically, in a caucus, a bunch of people get together in like a school gym or some sort of activity hall, and each corner of the room represents a candidate of each party. Everyone there would then choose the candidate they prefer and go stand in the corner that is labeled with their candidate. After everyone has chosen a corner, the corner labeling the candidate with the least amount of people loses, and everyone in the losing corner then has to choose a different corner. The people in the other corners then lure people choosing a corner, and the people in different corners then their own. This process continues until one corner has the most people, then the candidate that is labeled for that corner wins the caucus for that state. Pretty simple. Now, wait, there's more. No, not any more different types of caucuses or anything like that, I promise. It doesn't get much more difficult from here. What I was referring to was which states prefer caucuses over primaries and why. Certain states such as Iowa, the first state to hold a caucus each election year, and Alaska hold caucuses rather than primaries, generally due to the location of a rural area and because it's a way for the states to choose a candidate without holding an election. Alright, now that we have primaries and caucuses down, let's break things down just a little bit more and examine some parts that go along with the primary and caucus process. Let's talk about why each state can choose between a primary or a caucus, what winner-take-all means, what a superdelegate is, and some pros and cons, and last but not least, how a general presidential election differs from the primary and caucus process. I'm sure of the many things this video has made you wonder about, it has been nagging your brain as to why each individual state has the right to choose whether they would like to conduct a primary versus a caucus. We already went over why a state would choose one over the other, but how can a state just choose without consent of the government? The states are allowed to decide whether they would like to hold a primary election or a caucus thanks to the enumerated powers that they are granted to the states in the Constitution. It states in the Constitution, among other powers given to the states, that the state is allowed to control and conduct elections, thus allowing them to choose their preference of a primary or a caucus. Alright, what the heck is a superdelegate? Well, we briefly went over what a delegate is, but what makes a delegate so super? They're a secret group of men with superpowers. No, I'm kidding. That'd be cool, though. Superdelegates are a national party of leaders who automatically get a delegate slot in the Democratic National Party Convention and choose the candidate they would personally vote for. So in simpler terms, superdelegates are basically people with a lot of power in the National Party to potentially sway the election process when determining a candidate with their vote. Some pros and cons to superdelegates include a pro, which allows for the Democratic Party to maintain the outcome of their party candidate, whereas without them, non-affiliated voters could vote outside of the Democratic Party and decide the nominee that also could potentially throw the election for the Democratic Party if other party members are deciding their candidate. This being a pro in that it keeps a defined line between the different parties. A con would be the power that they hold within the voting process, whereas superdelegates have one vote for one person. Those pledged delegates that are earned through primaries can represent thousands of individuals. This then causes people to become concerned with the disproportionate influence some superdelegates are granted. This is a concern because individual voters' votes are generally decided based on a candidate's platform, whereas a superdelegate vote can by certain rules be bought. The whole system works for the party, but creates some distrust between those with power and those without. Now that we've covered what a superdelegate is, what does winner-take-all mean? Winner-take-all is a concept that is used during an election process through the Electoral College, or state votes. To define a winner-take-all system, it is when the candidate who gets the most votes wins all of the state's electoral votes. Alright, it's a sad time. We only have one more topic to cover. What the heck is the difference between primaries and caucuses and a general election? Well, the difference is that a primary election and a caucus are held to decipher between what candidates will run for the Republican and Democrat Party, although a general election is what comes after primaries and caucuses already determine two different candidates that are then voted for in the general election. The general election is the major deciding factor as to who the next president will be. Another difference is that the general elections are only held every 4 years on the same day for each state when the current president's term is coming to an end, and a new member decided from a primary and caucus, which are held whenever the state pleases, is voted upon in a general election. Well, it's been a blast. I hope this video helped you understand more about primaries and caucuses and their components. See you next time.